Alright, so Sinners. Now this movie did some things well and did some other things not as well, but in order to talk about this movie, I'm going to start off with what this movie did right. Now when I think of this movie, the very first thing that comes to mind would be the entire overall personality of this movie, which I very much enjoyed. I really enjoyed the music in this movie and appreciated how big of a part it was in the film. Not only do I really enjoy the soundtrack, but I feel the way that it was used and just the overall presence of the music in this movie did a really great job of not feeling overly repetitive. It certainly adds a lot to the personality of the film, and I'm very glad it's there. Although yet there is one shot take in this movie that I feel is not very well presented, and it has the music strongly incorporated into it. Now the actual music in the scene is pretty good and is very enjoyable, but the visual element to this movie is kind of goofy in its presentation. I totally understand the ideas and themes that they're going for in the presentation of this scene, but the way that the scene is presented just feels kind of goofy and difficult to take seriously. Now while overall I did enjoy this movie, I have to say that the beginning of this movie got off to kind of a rocky start. For the first 15 minutes or so, I was kind of skeptical in how they were deciding to present this information and just kind of how cliched everything felt. I wasn't really a big fan of how they tried to build up the backstory, and it felt like it could have done so in a better, clever way. I did feel that the performances in this movie were pretty good to very good for the most part in this movie. Michael B. Jordan was a lot of fun in this movie, and he did a great job with his performance. Although while talking about the two characters in this movie, I have to mention that the digital effects were kind of hit and miss at certain points. In the beginning of the movie, when it introduces the two main characters, one passes a cigarette to another, and the way that he passes the cigarette seems kind of unnatural and kind of slow in a little bit. And I mention this because it seems like a scene that was just clearly written to show off how fluid the animation would be, but it didn't really feel all that genuine to me. Now for the rest of the movie, this character is shown in a pretty dark environment, which for those of you who don't know, when CGI characters are shown in dark environments, the imperfections and textures are less noticeable, and sometimes it can be kind of annoying, but for the most part in this movie I thought that was well done. And although in other movies this tactic to show the imperfections as less occurring can be thought of as kind of inconvenient and also very distracting with how dark the movie is, but I found that it worked well for this movie. Now this movie does have a very basic formula to kind of a zombie type movie, but what really helps this movie out in distinguishing it is the fact that it very clearly has its own personality, as well as the fact that it really manages to take up the time in the first half of this movie to really build up these characters. There's one scene in particular of one of the twins going into town, and the way that he interacts with people and his mannerisms does a really great job of building up his character and makes it a lot of fun to watch. And all the rest of the side characters are also very well defined. Not to mention I thought the villain in this movie was really great. Not only is he very entertaining, he's also very well fleshed out, and his interactions with the main character and conversations they have are very interesting with the ideas and themes that they raise. Now as I mentioned earlier, this movie does have a very basic formula to it, which in turn leads to a large action scene near the end of the movie, and it's incredibly visceral and engaging. It feels pretty brutal at sometimes and also just very investing to these characters. Now I should mention a few criticisms in this movie very quickly. Now for starters, there's just an overabundance of cheap jump scares in this movie. It happens a good number of times, and in all honesty this movie doesn't really need it. It just feels like it's trying to fill some scare quota, and quite frankly I was really enjoying the personality of this movie above everything else. There were also some stupid decisions that the characters make in this movie, so I want to talk about those real quick, and in order to do that I have to get into spoiler territory, so if you don't want this movie spoiled, just skip to this part. So the main cast of characters is inside the shed, and the villain and his followers are outside, and at one point they open up the barn or door, whatever it is, to check on what's going outside, and at that point the main villain comes up to communicate with them. And the conversation, ideas, and interaction that he raises are all very interesting and engaging, but at the same time you just can't help but wonder why they don't just shut the door. And this is incredibly irritating because the solution to this would be very easy. You could just easily write in the script that the main villain shouts through a window or just from outside and the main characters hear him or something. There's really no reason why they had to keep the door open for so long, and they could have just shut it at any point, but I don't know, whatever. Now overall I really did enjoy this movie, and I would definitely recommend it to people to go and see in theaters. And for right now, this movie gets a very strong 6 out of 10.